Alright, He-Man and She-Ra fans, it is time to talk Scareglow. In the Masters of the Universe Classics line, I'm Scott ToyGuru Neitlich, and I was a brand manager for most of Masters of the Universe Classics. The interesting thing about Scareglow is back in the vintage line, as much as we all loved him, and kind of ironic, since he's a skeleton, he was kind of the harbinger of doom for the end of the vintage line, which is kind of interesting. I'm going to go into that. A quick aside first. I'm still running the auctions for charity for children affected by AIDS. Some rare Mattel toys from my Mattel days. Some He-Man items, some DC items, some one-of-a-kind items that you're really probably never going to see ever again on the auction block. So you could help a good cause and acquire a cool piece. Check out the link and the flag for the video. All right, back to the main show, the main man, Scareglow, the only glow in the dark Masters of the Universe figure from the vintage line. Although I think the ring that came with Trapjaw glowed in the dark, if I recall. But Scareglow had a glow-in-the-dark action feature, which made it very easy to translate that into classics because it didn't require a mechanism inside or a weird lever sticking out of the back, things like that. That was what prevented us from doing action features in classics. So we were really able to be true to his vintage action figure and basically maintain that completely because he glowed in the dark just like he did. And that was cool because, he was spooky and scary, and that was what made him really cool. I mean, he glowed in the dark, and he was one of my favorite figures. I mean, he really was when I was a kid. I mean, it's no secret that I love purple, so he was basically a glow-in-the-dark skeleton with a giant purple cape, and I don't know, that just made him really cool. And I think he's a big favorite among a lot of fans. Even if he didn't appear in the 2000X series, he kind of has sort of his own cult following among Masters of the Universe fans. And it's interesting because as much as we love him, as I said in the beginning, he was in a big way what kind of led to the downfall of the vintage line, and that's important background as we cover the classics figure. So let's first start by taking a trip back in time and talking about the vintage line and looking at the original series, or at least the original, kind of not just the 8-back, but even the second year. Most of the figures used the basic bucks. I mean, obviously Ram Man was an exception, and Teela and Evil Lynn had the female buck, but you pretty much had the beastie buck, the reptile buck, and the human buck that were used to create most of the figures, called, 80% plus. When it came to characters like Scareglow and Ninja, or, Ninja Warrior, as we called him for copyright reasons in the classics line, that was kind of a return to the basic buck structure, and that's kind of the crux of a lot of the story. If you look at things like the 85 line and the 86 line in the vintage days, you saw that most of the figures had a lot more tooling. I mean, they introduced the Horde, which had tons of tooling, and a lot of even the basic characters, you could see just even visually right away that they had a lot of unique parts. They weren't just a reuse of those original bucks. They still had things like the furry shorts to make them very, MOTU. And yes, I know every MOTU character does not have furry shorts. I've gotten in trouble for that one. But they still had that basic MOTU look. I mean, Roboto used Trapjaw's legs, but he had not just original arms to have the arm attachments, but he had a whole mechanism in his chest that had to be, completely uniquely tooled in order to have the action feature, to have the rotating gears, and etc., etc. Or characters like MOTUC here. I mean, he not only was completely composed of original parts, he wasn't even the proper size to fit on a vintage card. He had to be sold in a box. And Sorceress also she didn't use the Teela Evil Lynn female buck. She had her own original buck. And, again, lots and lots of tooling being used for these characters. So here's where the issue came from. Retailers in '86 were asking for more and more Masters of the Universe. They wanted more figures for the shelf. This line was outselling Barbie and Hot Wheels for Mattel, and retailers were very loud and clear. The problem was there was a big miscommunication, because while retailers were saying, I want more He-Man toys, what they really meant was, we want more He-Man and Man-at-Arms and Skeletor and Beast-Man. And Mattel heard their request for more figures, and they interpreted that as, oh, well, let's get more characters out there. So instead of shipping more He-Man, which is basically what every kid wants to start their collection off with, they came up with a fill-in-the-gap wave. So the whole wave that had Scareglow, you'll notice in comparison to the figures that preceded it, had almost no tooling. Scareglow was a head. Ninjor was a head and some weapons. Even, his ninja outfit and Scareglow's cape were cloth, meaning they didn't have to be tooled. There was very, very little tooling in this entire wave. You had essentially the main Buck, the human Buck here. Clamp Champ used Fisto's armor and got a new head and a new accessory. Very, very little tooling compared to the year that preceded this in Masters of the Universe, where all of the figures had a ton of tooling. Randor, same thing, new head, and the armor was just reuse from Jitsu, and the staff was from Whiplash, and the cape, again, was cloth. It didn't have to be tooled. So while, yes, there were a lot of variants of He-Man that shipped throughout the line, what kids really wanted was the core version that they saw on the cartoon show. He didn't really wear any of the other armor on the cartoon show the way in 2000X. He did wear different armor. He was always in his traditional look, and when you start buying toys, collecting toys, playing with toys, you want to start with the core character. You don't want to start with, somebody really obscure. And a lot of people who came, shall we say, late to the game, found that they could not find Skeletor and He-Man and Teela and Man-at-Arms and Beast-Man, etc., etc. And this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. While retailers were asking for more figures, Mattel responded by doing this super quick-to-market wave with no tooling. The other reason it had low tooling is it was rushed to market quicker than a normal wave would have been. Instead of the 2-year development cycle, it was just basically rushed to market with as little tooling as possible. And it had the reverse effect, where it basically kind of helped sink the line, because Mattel was over shipping product, and they weren't shipping the product that kids wanted. They misunderstood what retailers were asking for. And that is kind of how Scareglow and his wave wound up sort of being very detrimental to the vintage line, where Mattel shipped way too much, too quickly, and not enough of the core characters. And you can see that from all the tooling, or the lack of tooling in this wave, compared with previous waves, how very little development was done because this wave was rushed to market in a much quicker way. All right, back to Scareglow. So that was kind of his background of how he fit into the vintage line, and he was still cool. I mean, again, why he was glow in the dark is it was an easy action feature to do because it was done with plastic. You didn't have to have a mechanism. So again, part of the whole rush to marketness. I think I made that word up, but I like it. Of this wave. So easy action feature, very low tooling. In fact, when I was presenting Scareglow to Tim Kilpin, who was the general manager of Mattel and back in the day, the brand manager of Masters of the Universe, and I showed him that we wanted to do Scareglow, part of my rationale was he wasn't in the 2000X line, and he had a bit of a cult following, and fans really liked him. And I remember this, one of my very clear memories. Tim looks up, he's like, Scareglow? Really? Because to him, Scareglow was a fill-in-the-gap, rush-to-market figure back in the day. And the fact that he, had caught on and really become a cult classic kind of made him laugh. but he was more than happy to greenlight Scareglow, and that's how he got into the Classics line. And he was the first figure that we had an action feature that was called out on package, especially because figures that had a burst on the vintage line, we wanted to use that burst on the Classics package, and the only place we could fit it was the side panel. So he's the first figure that got a little call out on the side panel, on the blister with the little burst saying that he did in fact truly glow in the dark. One issue we did have with him, though, from translating from vintage to Classics, was in the vintage line, he only came with one accessory. And we had a plan in the long run that every figure was supposed to be released at retail in a movie year. A lot of people remember me saying that on the forums. Wait for a movie year, maybe in a movie year. Because in a movie year, we were going to bring the line to retail. And again, not this one end cap at like 2 Walmarts where they got a hold of some figures without my permission. It was meant to, in a movie year, this was going to be a big part of the movie lines. We'd put Classics out, and the way we would make them special for, so I guess, the retail release, or at least maintain the figures being special for the online release, was to take away one of the accessories for retail. So you'd either lose a head or you'd lose an accessory. So this way the original release online felt special for those who bought it early. And for Scareglow, because he only came with one accessory in the vintage line, well, we needed a second accessory in order to be able to remove that accessory from the hypothetical retail line in a movie year. That never happened. And we went to the Horsemen over this, and we said, come up with something. And they did. This was one of the coolest accessories they ever came up with. This was 100% them. I absolutely give them credit for this. They came up with this reliquary, like Marley's ghost, that was going to snap around his arm, and it had a real chain, and it opened up, and there was a key inside, and it was supposed to be the key to Castle Grayskull to represent that he had to carry around his crimes, because in life he had tried to break into the castle. And I have to say, this, not only was this amazing, but it was the one and only time I completely rewrote a character's bio after getting the Horseman sculpt. When I saw the accessory, I was like, this is way too cool to not make the whole bio about this. So I threw out the original Scareglow bio. I honestly don't even remember what it was, and I looked to see if I could find it for this video, and I couldn't find a copy. But I definitely remember I completely rewrote the bio to basically be all about this accessory. And that was really cool because, even having that little Castle Grayskull as the plug on the reliquary that kept the key inside was just, awesome and amazing. And I love how that kind of became the model for doing eventually the Castle Grayskull playset, even, with the ridge and the, et cetera, the things that weren't on the vintage line. And all of that kind of meant that the key that came with Scareglow had to work on the castle door. And this was a whole issue into itself. So when we were designing the playset, we realized, I wanted the key to basically work for the door, whether it was the front door or the side door or a back door or something. And design just didn't want to hear about it. I was in marketing, I was not in design, I was not in engineering. Their job was to do the design work and engineering work, and here I was from marketing saying, wait, here's how the design needs to work. And there were a lot of times I had to let fights go, but this was not one I was going to let go, and I really pressed for it. And luckily, my boss, Heather Litfin at the time, not during Scareglow, during Castle Grayskull, I tended to have almost like a new boss every year, because that's kind of the way Mattel works. She really went into the ring for me and was like, no, Scott's right. This character has the key to Castle Grayskull. It needs to work in the door. And we won that fight. And that was a fight worth winning. So I'm glad I picked that one. You really had to pick and choose your battles. So back to the vintage figure, looking at his name, his subtitle, he was called the Evil Ghost of Skeletor on package. And this led to a lot of confusion, especially online when the internet came around. People saying, well, wait a minute, does this mean he is Skeletor as a ghost? Is he Skeletor's ghost, or is he a Skeletor serving, or a ghost serving Skeletor? Like, a stormtrooper serving Darth Vader. So what I did in the bio is I basically made that clear. I called him the evil ghost serving Skeletor, not the evil ghost of Skeletor, to make it clear that this was not Skeletor's ghost, like Skeletor after he passed. And his real name in the bio, that whole Karak Null, well, honestly, the story behind that was Karak was just kind of a mispronunciation of crack, because he had a crack in his skull, and Null because he was a ghost, and he was null and void. And that's basically where Karak Null came from. And I know this name really caught on. People were even making customs and requesting figures of Karak Null, the man before he became Scareglow. And I thought that was really cool. That might have been fun to get to, but maybe a bridge too far. The very last thing about Scareglow is he was the first subscription figure that it was actually sold as part of the sub, and it became clear that we needed to start putting the names on the white box because it was getting confusing. Nobody knew what was in the white box unless you could translate the number at the bottom right corner, was the toy number. So it kind of helped us figure that out. And hey, it took a ghost to help us figure that out. What can I say? But he was great, and he really only had one more enemy that he had to conquer. And they were coming for him.